Hi, my name is Erin and welcome to my fall knitting plans video. I'm going to start by saying this is my first time filming a video for YouTube and I don't know exactly how the editing and production of this video is going to go, so I really am hoping that I'm in focus, but I can't actually see my camera screen because I'm not wearing my glasses because they create weird reflections. So bear with me, and hopefully if I continue making these videos the production value will increase as time goes on. But today we are working with a new setup for the first time, my first setup, so yeah, we'll just see how it goes. Like I said, my name is Erin and I'm a knitter and crafter living on the west coast of Canada, actually on a small island off the west coast. And I love to knit. I also do some spinning, some sewing, some weaving, all the fun fiber things, but knitting is my first love and passion. I've been knitting like a lot for about 5 years now, but like so many people, I learned from my mom when I was a kid, and it's just something that has brought me a great sense of calm and satisfaction over a period of my life that, yeah, I think the last 5 years has been stressful for a lot of people, and it was for me too. So through a lot of pretty significant life changes, it has been something that I have always turned to, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. So I want to share my thoughts and ideas and my plans with more people, because that seems like fun, and also because I'm a teacher, and last year I had a teaching contract, so I had my own classroom and I had all the responsibilities that come along with that. But this year I'm starting off the year as a teacher on call or a substitute teacher, which means that I just have more free time in the evenings and weekends, and also am less likely to be working 5-day weeks, to be perfectly honest. So I have more crafting time, and that makes me very excited, especially as we head into my favorite season of the year, which is, I feel like predictably for a knitter, fall and winter. So today I want to share with you my fall knitting plans. Like I said, I want to share 2 projects that I have recently completed in anticipation of fall, and then 2 projects that are currently on my needles that I hope to finish and wear this season, and then a couple other projects that are not yet on the needles but I anticipate working on over the next couple of months and beyond. So yeah, if that sounds interesting to you, get comfortable. I hope you have a project. I feel like anyone who watches this type of long form talking about knitting content is probably knitting or working on something while doing it. So yeah, get comfortable because I am feeling in the mood to talk about knitting. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the first thing that I finished in anticipation of fall this year. And this is my Rawnsley pullover. Here it is, in all of its lovely stranded colorwork glory. This is a sport weight all over stranded colorwork design, and it is from a Susan Crawford pattern that she adapted from a 1940s sweater pattern. To have an increased size range and also just be a more intuitive knitting process for the modern knitter. I chose to knit this in Juniper Moon Patagonia, which is a sport weight yarn. It's 100% organic merino wool that is a nice balance of being quite soft while also having a bit of a rustic feel, and as a result, I really like it for color work, and I have knit a few color work pieces in this sweater and been very pleased with the result each time. This is also the second or third time I've used this specific yarn for steeking, and I find it is a very steekable yarn. I like to reinforce my steeks by needle felting them a little bit, and this yarn felts really nicely and feels very sticky and sturdy post steek cutting. This sweater is worked from the bottom up in the round to the armpit, where you cast on some steek stitches for the armholes, continue to work upwards and doing some decreases to shape armholes. And then you cut open the arm steeks, you pick up stitches, you work some short rows to create a sleeve cap, and then you knit down to the bottom of the sleeve. And then you cut the neck hole steeks. There's a front neck steek and a back neck steek, and then you pick up and you knit the corrugated ribbing on the neckband. All the ribbing on this sweater is corrugated, which I think is really lovely, and I love the frequent color changes in the corrugated ribbing. I've knit corrugated ribbing a few times now, but I've never done this much color changing in the ribbing of a project, and I think it adds a really nice extra special detail, and I think the effect from far away especially is very, very visually interesting. So that's something that I will take away from this project and might consider incorporating into future color projects. Overall, I'm extremely happy with the way this sweater turned out. The fit is great. It was fun to knit. I love steeking things. I've knit several steeked garments now, and it is definitely my preferred way of working a colorwork garment. I do not like working colorwork flat, and it's fun cutting into your knitting. I don't know. I find it very satisfying. I'm at the point where I've done it enough times now that it doesn't scare me. I feel confident and I think it's quite enjoyable. So if you haven't done it before and you're interested in trying it, I would say go for it, because it really is, I feel like when I learned that I could just steek things, it like opened up the world of knitting for me, especially knitting colorwork, because it's just, yeah, who wants to knit a whole colorwork garment flat? I also knit this kind of as a precursor to another project that I want to knit at some point in the future. I have the yarn. I'm not sure if I have the confidence yet, but I really want to knit the Virginia cardigan by Marie Wallen. And I received, I think 2 years ago for Christmas now, all the yarn to make that sweater in the exact called for yarn and colors, which is perfect because I want it exactly as it looks in the product photos. So I have all of this gorgeous Rowan felted tweed, probably the most expensive sweater quantity of yarn that I am in possession of. And I'd say the only thing that freaks me out about steeking is the fact that you can't go back once you cut, right? So if you cut something open and then later down the line decide you don't like the fit, you can't just unravel it and reuse that yarn, because now your yarn has been severed through the middle all the way up. So you're only gonna have like little strands, you know? So I want to convert that pattern. I think it's originally knit flat and seamed together. I'm not interested in knitting an all over colorwork garment flat. So I'm planning on turning it into a steeked garment, not only steeked up the front, but also steeks for the armholes and steeks for the neck. And then I plan to knit the sleeves in the round using German short rows to create the sleeve cap shaping, as opposed to how the pattern is written, which is even the sleeves are knit flat. And so I feel fairly confident in my ability to modify the pattern to be that way, but I wanted to try a project where I did armhole steeks and where I picked up sleeves and knit short rows to create sleeve cap shaping first. And this was a great opportunity to do that because all of that work was written into the pattern. And so I just had to follow Susan's lovely, clear directions, and I feel a lot more confident going into that project whenever that happens. Yeah, I'd say the pattern is very well written. It's been expanded to work for a whole range of bust sizes. I knit, I think, the 6th size in the pattern, which fits me really nicely with a few inches of positive ease. And it's just a gorgeous pattern. It comes from a gorgeous book, which has just recently, or is just about to be available as a hard copy book. I purchased the ebook a while ago before all the patterns had been released. So I've been receiving them kind of once a month for the last while. But I would really recommend the book. It's a gorgeous collection of vintage sweaters that have been just like rewritten to be a more appealing knitting process, and also of course the size expansion, which is a huge part. I'm really happy because one of the patterns that just came out, one of the last ones in the book, is called the Clarion cardigan, and I just fell in love with it as soon as I saw the email, and so I'm going to knit that this winter as well. And so I'm excited that I will have another pattern from Susan's lovely book. I believe it's called A Stitch in Time Volume 3, the Colourwork edition. So check it out. I'm very happy that I did. And I'm very proud of this sweater. So the only thing that causes a bit of an issue, and I don't even know what I would do to change this, because feeling my corrugated ribbing, I do have quite a bit of stretch in this corrugated ribbing, but it's a more fitted neck hole, and so with the corrugated ribbing, it's a bit of a yank to get it over the head. It sits beautifully, just like perfectly once it's on, but it's not a sweater that I would want to be pulling on and off a lot, which is kind of too bad because I am someone who tends to fluctuate in my temperature a lot throughout the day, and I'm very on and off, which is why I knit so many cardigans. But this is just a sweater that I think has to be a little bit more of a commitment, because I certainly could not pull this on and off if I had like my hair done, or like, not that I wear makeup very often, but like if I was, I would not want this going on and off over my face frequently, because it is kind of an intense experience. But that is my Rawnsley pullover, and I love her, and I think it's very, very autumnal, and the yarn is great, the fit is great, the pattern was excellent to follow. So that's that one. The next thing that I just finished last weekend, so a couple of days ago, so it's fresh off the blocking mats, and this is probably a very familiar pattern to people who are into knitting YouTube and Instagram. This is the Lumme Pullover by Sari Nordlund. It is a worsted weight stranded colorwork yoke sweater. It is a circular yoke, and it's knit from the top down seamlessly, so it's a very fun pattern to follow. It's very quick and easy to knit. I think this was on my needles for 12 days. Granted, I had a lot of like intense knitting time, but still, this was quick, and I knit it in the 5th size or the 6th size. And I knit it longer than the pattern told me to. So, I mean, it's a decent amount of knitting, but it went by very quickly, and it was very fun. Especially working this yoke was just a joy. I worked this up in Briggs & Little Heritage 2-ply, which is a great worsted barren weight Canadian wool. And it's a very affordable sweater yarn. I think for me, I can purchase it generally for around $7 or slightly under per 113 gram skein. So that means that I can get a sweater out of this in between $35 and $45, depending on the amount of ease in the given sweater and the stitch pattern in said sweater. I used 5 skeins of the main color, which is the color 21. It's in a really nice chocolate brown color. So I used 5 skeins of that, and then I used just like about 1 and maybe a quarter of the contrast color, which is just in their natural white color. The yoke took exactly 1 skein. So if you were just doing the yoke and you were knitting like the 4th, 5th size-ish, you might just eke it out. But I did also want to do the color work on the cuffs, because I just think that's a pretty touch, and it was fun to knit. So I'm happy that I did that. And I was just pulling the contrast color from another sweater quantity of Briggs & Little that I have, where I have like way more than I'm actually going to need. And so it was not a big deal for me to break into one of those skeins and just point a little bit off for these sleeve cuffs. This sweater, I'm very happy with it. I don't always like circular yoke sweaters. I'm pretty picky about them, and these days I'm not very drawn to knitting circular yoke colorwork patterns. The fit is tricky, and even when the fit is right, I'm not always sold on the look of them on me. But I'm glad that I made this sweater. I think it's going to be a great kind of like rugged outer layer sweater that I can throw on over whatever shirt I'm wearing, because it does have a lot of positive ease. I did get a larger stitch gauge than the pattern recommended, I got a gauge of 16 stitches per 4 inches. I believe the pattern calls for a gauge of 18 stitches per 4 inches. I worked the whole sweater on the size needle that was recommended for the color work in the yoke, because Sari tells you or recommends that you size up by 0.5 millimeters for the color work, because I think it's quite standard for people to have a tighter color work tension. I have a significantly looser color work tension, and so I have to work very hard and be quite conscious to even achieve a tension that is similar to my regular stockinette tension. So I just worked the whole thing in a 5 millimeter needle, which probably I should have worked the whole thing in a 4.5 millimeter needle instead of going with the larger of the 2 recommended needle sizes. But I was hoping that I would end up with a slightly larger sweater than the measurements were indicating. So I was okay with that. And I knew that I was getting a 16 and a half stitch gauge. And I chose to take that risk. I'm pleased with the results. I probably could have knit a size down or sized down my needle. But it doesn't do that thing that color work or that round yokes can do when they're too big, where they like ripple. It was doing a bit of that before I blocked it, but post blocking it lies nice and flat, and I just have a lot of space in this sweater, which is honestly not a complaint, especially for a sweater knit in a very rustic yarn that I will never be wearing this next to skin. I will almost always certainly have a long sleeve shirt under here. So for the purposes that I was hoping to achieve with this sweater, I think it worked out very, very well, and I'm excited to get lots of wear out of this fall and winter season. Okay, I feel like I'm making pretty good progress. I don't think I've been talking for too long. Okay, my next 2 projects that I'm going to talk about are things that I have cast on recently in anticipation of fall. So I have, first, I'll go with the project that's almost done. I think this is going to be a finished object before the week is over. This is the V-neck Chokki by Noriko Ichikawa, and it is a lovely V-neck vest with buttons up the front, so a vest cardigan, I guess, with 2x2 rib details, and it's very simple. It's all stockinette, but I just really like the silhouette of this vest. It has the shoulders are supposed to come a little bit over your shoulders, so I guess more of like a drop shoulder style, as opposed to sitting on the shoulder, which in the other vests that I've knit, that is the intended fit of those vests, and I don't wear them a whole lot. So I was attracted to this one because the pattern photos give it more of a kind of slouchy, casual vest feel, and that's what I would like in my fall vest as well. I'm knitting this in BC Garn Loch Lomond. I've seen a fair few people talk about this yarn, and I think it deserves the hype. It's a really nice 100% organic wool. You get 150 meters per 50 grams, which for a DK weight yarn is very generous. And I believe that's because I'm pretty sure this is a woolen spun yarn. And so it's very lofty and airy and warm without being heavy. And I find it next to skin soft. I find this yarn very, very soft. I actually find this yarn comparable to the Juniper Moon Patagonia, even though the way they work up is different. They have a similar hand feel to me. So I'm working this up in the color number 17, which is called Moss, and I purchased this yarn when it was on clearance from my local yarn store. And so I got a really, really good deal on this yarn. I can see that on the original price sticker, it is priced at $16.95 from my local yarn store. But I feel like I got it for more like almost half of that. So this was a very affordable sweater's quantity of yarn. I did originally purchase 8 skeins with the intent of making a sweater. But I ended up going with a vest because 1200 meters is not really a suitable amount of yarn for a sweater with the amount of ease that I generally prefer sweaters to have. I definitely could get a sweater out of 1200 meters of DK weight yarn, but I wasn't really, I don't know. I couldn't find the right pattern. And so this was sitting in my stash. I kept kind of switching the yarn that I was planning on using, or the pattern that I was planning on using. It was moving around in my queue. And then this pattern was released, I think in the spring. And it just felt right. It just felt right for this pattern. And I really wanted to make this vest. And I also was not open to purchasing more yarn. So that's kind of how this mashup happened. And I think I'm going to end up having a good amount of yarn for this vest. Like, I don't think what I was worried about happening is going to happen. I was worried that I was going to finish this vest and have like 3 skeins of this yarn left over and then feel like, oh, I would have had enough to knit a sweater. I wish I had. But I've just finished one of the armholes right now. And I've bound off the body. So I have the button band and another armhole. And I'm down to about half of the current ball that I'm working and then 1 additional skein. And then I think I have like a small, like maybe a quarter of another ball that I was using at some point. So that to me feels reasonable. Like if I end up with 1 skein or just under a skein of this yarn left, I'll be happy with that and I'll use it to make an accessory and I won't feel like it's such a weird thing because like obviously it's not a waste of yarn. I'm going to end up with a beautiful garment, but I don't know if any other knitters have this feeling where when you have a sweater's quantity of yarn, you don't want to break up the sweater's quantity, or you want to like find a project that's going to maximize the yarn that you have and use it all up or as much as possible up. That's the feeling I was having here, but I'm glad I pushed through it because I'm very happy with this garment so far. And I think actually I would not have had enough to make a sweater anyway. So this is the V-neck Chokki and I'm excited about it. I'm picturing myself wearing it over like a crisp white t-shirt with some jeans, and maybe on days where it's raining, so I have to wear my raincoat, but it's not cold enough to want to wear a sweater under my raincoat because also like that just makes me feel sweaty and gross sometimes, but I want like a little bit of warmth on my core. That's what I'm picturing for this vest. I think it's going to be a great work piece, especially because with teaching, especially like I'm an art teacher. And so a lot of the time I'm doing messy things with my hands. And so I don't want a sweater that has sleeves that are going to get in the way and potentially get paint or clay on them. So that's my V-neck Chokki. I already said that. I'm really excited about it and I'm excited to show you. Hopefully in the next video that I make, I will maybe even get to wear it. So yeah. Okay, so the other project from my fall knitting plans that I have already cast on is the Janni sweater by Orlane Sooke. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. I'm going to put it up here on the screen as well as in the description. This is a top-down seamless sweater that has kind of like a faux saddle shoulder construction. It's done in that way where Petite Knit does this with a lot of her patterns where you have the appearance of a saddle, but it's actually just shaped with increases using very specific varied increase rates throughout the yoke to create the illusion of a saddle shoulder without having to actually stop and pick up stitches or seam things together and have multiple parts. This sweater is pretty basic, but it's unique in the fact that it has a very deep yoke and almost, I don't want to say like batwing because that brings me back to dark times in my young adult years of like batwing cardigans, and like I'm not sure I'm ready to like fully embrace the batwing, but it has a bit of a batwing, or I've heard people call it like a dolman construction. I don't think it technically is. I don't know. I'm a very casual sewist, so I'm not always the best with my understanding of like what different constructions and fits are called. But it has a very long yoke, and so as a result you have a lot of extra fabric in the arm, and then it comes to quite a tapered sleeve, and I just really like the way that that looks, and I think that that will be a practical and unique piece in my wardrobe because I'll have lots of space to wear shirts underneath. I guess you might be getting the impression that I'm really into pieces that work well for layering. The climate that I live in, it's kind of necessary because it does get cold. It also can be warm. Our fall days can be very mild, or they can be quite chilly, and our overnight lows tend to be significantly lower than our daytime highs. So layering pieces are practical, and they're also just practical as a teacher. And especially now as I'm going into different schools and not really knowing what to expect in terms of the temperature I'm going to be in all day. So yeah, I think this will be a great like elevated sweatshirt piece, and I think it'll look really nice with my favorite work pants, which are just like a pair of dark wash blue denim kind of straight leg jeans and like my boots or my Birkenstocks. I think that'll be a really cozy and comfortable and cute outfit. The real showstopper of this project though is the yarn. This is Noro Madara, and it is in the color number 29. I don't know what the name of that colorway is, but it is a 60% wool, 30% silk, 10% alpaca yarn. And I'm sure you've seen this yarn before if you follow other knitting podcasters, but it has a very kind of like slubby, thick and thin texture. It's a single ply yarn, and it has a lot of little bits of other random colors spun into it. So it's just a pleasure to knit. It's really fun. It's not in my comfort zone as far as yarns. I don't know if you can tell, but I really like browns and like mossy greens and rusty colors, very typical fall colors. And this is, I've never knit a pink project before. This is new for me, but I think for me to commit to a pink project, this is the way to do it because it's just so fun. You kind of can't help but be into it. Yeah, so it's coming along. It doesn't look like much. I only cast on a couple of days ago and worked the short rows and the first few increases, but I think this will be a quick project when I sit down and really get into it, which is what I'll do after I'm finished my vest. And I'm excited to have this piece. It's also very, very soft. I find this yarn extremely soft, so yeah, exciting. All right, we are into kind of the third and final segment of this video, which is things that I want to knit for fall that I have not yet cast on. So I have 3 projects here, 3 garments, and I hope that I am able to work on all of them, but I probably won't be able to finish them all, realistically speaking, because at least, well, 2 out of 3 of these are quite involved projects. So being realistic, maybe I'll finish like 2 out of 3 of these, but I would like to at least get all of these on my needles before November. I think first I'll talk about the yarn that's been in my stash the longest. This is Sooke Yarn and Fiber yarn. This is the wool and alpaca 2-ply yarn, and this is a, I'd say like heavy worsted. It's calling itself a worsted weight. I think this could also be called an Aran weight yarn. I think you could probably substitute this for an Aran weight yarn anyway, because it's 182 meters, well, per 120 grams. So they are larger skeins. It is 90% Dorset wool and Cotswold Hampshire cross wool. So a mixture of, I guess, Dorset and then Cotswold Hampshire cross. And it's from 2 specific lambs. Their names are Pepper and Peanut. And then it also has 10% alpaca. So this is a very soft wool, as you would expect lamb's wool and alpaca to be. It's in this lovely natural kind of like sandy color. And this is cool. This yarn is local to me. I purchased it at a fiber festival a couple years ago, and it is a very special kind of, it was a splurge, it was a treat to myself, and I've been waiting for the right project to come along. I knew I wanted to knit something as interesting, like I wanted a pattern that was as interesting as this yarn. And so when the book club cardigan by Sari Nordlund came out, I instantly was like, yeah, that's what this is supposed to be. The book club cardigan, again, I'm sure you've seen this everywhere. I saw the photos come out before the test knit and I was just like, yep, sold. That's a great cardigan. I love knitting cables. I love knitting Sari's cabled patterns. I've knit a Billy pullover. I've knit a few others. I've knit I finished a Moby pullover recently. So I just enjoy knitting cables, especially in the winter. And I feel like I've been doing a lot of color work lately. And so I'm craving something textured. This is an all over cable pattern and it's written for a sport weight held with a mohair, or I think the suggested substitution is like a worsted weight yarn. I'm pretty confident I will get gauge with this. And yeah, I don't have a ton to say about it except that I'm really excited and I do think I have enough yarn. I have read on other people's project pages on Ravelry that they, despite purchasing the recommended amount of yarn for their size, did run out, but I have a lot of this yarn. So when I bought it, I was like, I want to buy enough that I can make whatever project I want to, and I'm really happy I did because I ended up picking an all over cabled, oversized cardigan. And it feels like a great use. So I'm going to get started on that soon. That is probably maybe the next project that I will cast on once I'm done my V-neck vest. And then I'll have the all stockinette Janni and then a cabled cardigan on the go. And maybe I'll cast on a Colourwork project just because I like to have all my bases covered. Speaking of Colourwork, we'll talk about that project next. So I want to knit the Marit cardigan by Kristin Drysdale. This is a pattern that was in an edition of Lina, like their Lina magazine, a couple of years ago now, I think. It is available for purchase individually on Ravelry at this point, and I want to knit it in Gathering Yarn's Brook Farm fingering yarn, and I have wanted to knit something in this yarn for so long. It's in my local yarn store. Every time I go, I squish it and I feel it, and it's just the perfect soft but rustic, lovely 2-ply wool. I think you can tell, like, I love a rustic yet soft 2-ply wool. It's just my favorite type of yarn to knit with. And so I picked out these 3 colors. This white color is the color number 1, and this is going to be my main color. So this is going to be the background of the cardigan. And then my contrast color 1 is this lovely sagey green color, which is the color number 10. It's called Grassington, which I think is kind of funny. And then my contrast color 2 is color number 11, which is called Settle. And this is like a lovely kind of like blackberry stain color. And again, not in my typical wheelhouse. This is a very Aran color. This is not so much an Aran color, but not a lot of this is actually used in the pattern. And I think it just goes really nicely with these other 2. I think that this is a pattern I want to work on over the fall and wear in the winter, but also something that will transition into the early spring very nicely because of these colors. So I'm very excited to cast that on. Again, it's a project with steeks. It's all over Colourwork. It's all my favorite things, and I just can't wait to get going on this and share it with you when it's in progress. Something about knitting Colourwork is just so satisfying. Like, seeing the pattern develop as you go is just, it's the best. So those are my 2 plans that I definitely want to cast on soon. I also have a third kind of like backup plan, something that I would really like to do, but if it doesn't happen because I'm too wrapped up in the other stuff, that's okay. But this is kind of my backup for if I get into these projects and then I'm just like, whoa, this is a lot, having a fingering weight all over Colourwork sweater and an all over cabled cardigan. I need something less exciting in my life. And either way, this will get knit at some point over the next few months, but I want to make a Lakes pullover by Ozetta. So, and I want to make it in black, which is I've never knit a black sweater, and I've knit about 60 sweaters. I've never knit a black one. I've never even wanted to knit a black sweater, but I was thinking about it recently, how I used to have this store-bought Aritzia sweater circa probably like 2012, and I wore that sweater to death, and I kind of was thinking about it recently and just like, I miss that sweater, and I want a basic black sweater. I don't want a lot of black sweaters. I think this might be the one and only for the foreseeable future, but I do want one. So I've had the Lakes in my queue for a while. I think it's got a fun construction. It's a true saddle shoulder where you knit the saddles and you pick up pieces or pick up stitches. And I've never actually knit a saddle shoulder that way before, like a true saddle shoulder. And I think it'll be fun and engaging, but also mindless and satisfying. So, and also if I'm going to knit something in black yarn, I want it to be something simple. So I have Berroco Lanas, which is 100% wool. It says it is a special blend of South American wools, and it is 200 meters for 100 grams. So kind of a bang on worsted weight yarn. I find this yarn extremely comparable to Cascade 220, and it is an alternative that I go to for that yarn a lot because it's more readily available to me in my local yarn store. It's just a good workhorse yarn. It is not itchy, it's not soft, it's just kind of middle of the road, but really nice, and also middle of the road in terms of price. Not as cheap as a Briggs & Little sweater is going to be, but nowhere near as expensive as, you know, like this sweater or like my Noro sweater is going to be. So, which feels right for me for a sweater that I just want to be a basic staple and yeah, just kind of blend into my wardrobe. I want to wear it with, again, my favorite work pants, which are dark wash blue jeans, probably mostly with dark wash blue jeans because I don't think it would be my go-to sweater for like most of my dresses and skirts are kind of warmer colors, and I like to wear like browns and grays with them. I think black would feel, well, I mean, it would look fine, but black just sometimes feels a little harsh to me, and I wear it pretty sparingly, but I do think this sweater will have a place in my closet. So that is kind of my third thing that I would like to cast on sometime in the next little bit. But I'm in no rush because I know once I start it, it'll be fast. It'll be over very quickly. And I'm definitely not in desperate need of more sweaters. I have too many already. So thank you for joining me in this video. I would love to hear in the comments what you're planning on making for this fall and winter season. It's my favorite time of year. I think I already said that, but I just love when the seasons start to change. And I can pull out all my sweaters, I can pull out all my pants. Like, dressing for me is just not as much fun in the summer. I love layering, and it's just a really beautiful time of year. My wife and I went to our county fair yesterday and had a candy apple and walked around and hung out with a bunch of sheep. Thanks for joining me today while I talk about my fall knitting plans. I hope that you have some great fall knitting lined up too. I would love to hear what other people are planning on working on in the comments, and I hope that you have a great start to your September. Thanks for watching.